Hello, Clay. Welcome back to our little podcast about Star Trek. Are you ready to float in the proverbial space of podcasting media with me?
Oh, yeah. Pull me in close, baby.
I got something to tell you. Now that I know, now that the oxygen in this office is starting to run out, I have some important things to tell you. Namely, just the password for the Patreon account if I die. How are you? Good?
Yeah, voice is getting better. Aside from that, doing pretty well. Yourself?
Good. Your voice does sound better, actually.
Thank you.
It sounded so much better that I didn't even sort of realize that it was better. You know what I mean? It was just like back to normal.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's like 85%, 90% back to normal.
We are here.
Which, based on the last time when I was like, oh, my voice is so bad, and everyone else was like, I can't even tell the difference. I was like, wow, what do I sound like normally?
Or we just need to up the bit rate of our podcasts, I guess, if we all sound like Tin Can Radio Man. This is Day of Honor. It's with a U if you're in Britain. It's just an O if you're in the Americans. Day of Honor is the third episode of the fourth season of Star Trek Voyager. It came out on the 17th of September, 1997. It was written by Jerry Taylor, directed by Jesus Salvador Trevino. In-universe date is not specifically known. It's sometime in 2374. In Day of Honor, Lieutenants B'Elanna Torres and Tom Paris admit feelings for each other while close to death. A race of homeless aliens asks for Voyager's help, but are not quite satisfied with what they receive. They have a spaceship, but they're not that homeless, right? Doesn't that makes everybody homeless if you just don't have a planet to go to.
I was really surprised by that scene where Janeway goes to the city council meeting and says they really need to clean up the sidewalks in front of Voyager because it's getting disgusting.
The guy should have
some more empathy than that.
Yeah, the guy should have started like a tent city on Voyager, and they're just like, "What the? How are we going to get rid of these aliens?" And people say, "There's no problem here. There's no problem." Yeah, I mean, they are obviously set up to be homeless. They do the aggressive homeless thing of like you give them a little bit of money and they're like, is that it? Like,
it was kind of really both sides of the fencing there as far as the view of homeless people.
It was, yeah. They were assholes. They were assholes.
Where it's like these are people who should be helped, but also maybe not by us.
Kick the can down the road. They can pick it up and they can use it to put coins in. So Day of Honor is the third episode of this one. I don't know. Do you want to start with, like, it's got the A and the B thing. It's got Seven's story with the homeless aliens, and it's got the, I don't even know if the memory alpha implies that the Torres and Paris story is the primary one. I don't even know if I would really agree with that. But wherever you want to start, I guess we can go there.
I don't think the Torres and Paris. Well, first of all, I liked 75% of this episode.
Okay.
I really liked what they were doing with Torres. I really liked the whole Day of Honor concept thing and how she was fighting against it and didn't know if she wanted to go down the path of her Klingon nature.
Yeah. Before we go there, though. Did you like the Klingon? He's like, are you ready for the hardest day of your Klingon life? First,
I love that.
You're going to have an appetizer. Then you're going to chase it down with some wine.
It will be a cold meatball that has been out since the first guest has come to the party. No, I really like that whole sequence. Like, if you took that exact script and just used different voices, that I feel like you could plug that right into Lower Decks and it would fit perfectly.
Yeah.
Like if instead of Torres it was Mariner, I think it would fit perfectly. I liked that whole concept and I like what they were trying to do with Torres, but I was not expecting this to end with I'm going to get some honor by telling you I love you. Mm-hmm. That was a little bit, that's the part I didn't like, but I liked what the setup. I liked her being very suspicious and not trusting of Seven. I like the Seven stuff quite a bit. I think Jerry Ryan is automatically a +1 for the show. I like her performance.
This felt like the first episode of the Seven I sort of recognize in a way, like even down to how she looks and everything like that. But
That suit is preposterous.
Yeah. Great ass.
Like there's no, I can't say there's really a flaw in any part of it, but it's very
tailored. It's extremely tailored.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like it's like a one-use suit because you have to be cut out of it at the end of every day.
Yeah. I'm just the tailoring of her breast area. Like the tailoring is so precise.
It's very aggressive.
It's very precise. It's interesting. I just think of like folding it. It must be because it's one of those things where there's like excess material at the top. You can't fold it evenly. It's just a very
the whole middle section is probably like a corset. You know? It's probably like a hard. Yeah.
Yep. Just not.
That's a hang only garment, Wes. You don't fold that.
That's true. Yeah. Dry clean only for Jerry's cat suit. I don't know where to start. I guess I think I liked the Seven stuff better than the B'Elanna stuff, mostly.
Yeah.
I think I like the Seven storyline a little bit better. It's clear this has given me really good, big DS9 season 4 vibe. 4? Yeah, 4. The season where Worf is introduced, right? I'm feeling very similar to that in that in the DS9 season where Worf is introduced, Worf is involved in like every episode of the season for no particular reason. Like there's just the writers are clearly excited to play with a new toy that's there, and so he's in every scene for some reason. 7 is getting there. Obviously, they're going to go in the thing that we kind of predicted, which is that they're not going to continue to play her as someone who's super shifty. She's kind of on board now. And so it's like the perspective is really she's on board, but you have to convince everyone else that she is on board. They don't believe that that's the case so far.
Yeah.
Mostly.
I actually really liked that even Janeway wasn't sure in this episode.
I think personally I would prefer the other way. If 7 was a little bit more suspicious than what she is, and if there was a sense of like, you can't really trust her yet. I don't know what she's up to. But the thing that I mostly think about 7 is that it's really interesting to me, probably even in a bigger sense than what this episode does, is that 7's story is really a reboot of the show's original concept of no one trusting each other. It's surprising that they rebooted that idea so strongly, and I think they're obviously doing it better because they've stuck with it for 3 episodes at this point, so it's like, oh, okay, it means something. But that's really the most surprising thing to me, is that she's not, her positives and her negatives are interesting. She's not a very original character, I don't think, and her storyline is a reboot of the original Voyager setup. Like I see her at this point, at least, as she's not very different from Data, except they don't trust her. So it's like an untrustworthy Data.
Well, she's different from Data in that. I guess it's similar now. But I was going to say, in the first half of the episode, the thing that makes her dissimilar to Data is that Data is always looking to do the more human thing, and 7 is not even considering it, which I thought was, I really liked that stuff when they were like, you had this information the whole time, you didn't tell anybody, and she's like, I mean, that's not what Borg do. Yeah. We take, we don't give. Yeah. Like that stuff is interesting to me. But I think if you, I don't think it's that much different.
I thought that felt a little. That was such a throwaway. I was like, that feels a little bit too cute. There, I wish this was a little bit more of a thing, because I see the conflict there about her not being used to this new style of life and how they do things. It still to me feels a little bit just like it's surface level stuff in some way. I don't know how you get it to be any deeper than that, but
I think the issue is, I don't really know what 7 wants at this point, because like it feels like it would be more natural for her to be more reluctant to come around. Yep. But they seem to be playing her as though she's like she is actively working to get people to trust her. Yeah. You know, like nobody trusts her, and she's like, oh, well, what do I have to do to prove to you that I'm not being duplicitous?
Yeah.
Where it feels like the more natural way to do it, coming off of the way they set her up, would be to have her a little bit hesitant still to come around completely, you know?
Yeah, I feel she's like on the scale of 1 to 10, between like totally indifferent and wanting to be a part of things. Like the wanting to be a part of things is like a 10. She's kind of like a 6.5, sort of like she's just over the line of being, because I think they still write her and play her as though she's not going out of her way to help people. She will do it if it is something that can happen and it wraps up a storyline. But she's not, you know, in Janeway's office going like, oh, give me something to do. Let me prove that this is what the people want. So I appreciate that. I think I would actually prefer if she was like a 4 or 4.5 on that scale. I wish she was a little bit more indifferent to what everyone else wanted. But it's really a minor concern at this point.
I do like the point of view where I like her point of view being, well, you either trust me or you don't.
Yeah.
You know, and like it not being really up to her. Or she doesn't really care. You know, it's like, well, you either give me a job, which is why you brought me here, or you put me back in the brig or whatever. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, I think I would say that she's close to Data, and obviously like her affect is very Data-like, and the fact that she kind of knows things. She knows a lot of stuff, like an android would know things. I don't think she's exactly like Data in that I think that what you're saying, like they're playing her in a position where she's not actively sort of as helpful or as like sort of optimistic as Data is in a lot of ways. And I think that that's good and fine. I think maybe the problem at this point is that her performance is a little bit more than what her characterization is, really. So like her roboticness is like primarily the driver of her like appearance, for lack of a better word. I think that they have not quite settled into how you tell a 7-story super effectively. I think they're still trying to figure out what this means.
Yeah.
And so she strikes me as Data in that sense, in that it's like, it's this character who doesn't really understand anything, and all the other scenes with other characters of them explaining what this means to this person. Hopefully they move away from that relatively quickly, because I don't really care for that kind of story. But I like the performance. I was hesitant on her in her Scorpion appearance, but I think she's gotten a lot better once they moved away from this Borg persona thing, and she's now her own person. And I think that I don't think this is a great episode. I think it's fine. But I do feel, at least a couple episodes in, this could all torpedo, I do feel that this season is different in terms of what the stories that they're trying to tell include. Sure. I don't know if it's a 7th thing, but it just feels different.
I think this is a better episode than most of the ones we watched last season.
I would agree with that. Frankly. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But it's still this difference this season seems to be, there just seems to be a lot more characters talking sort of quote unquote heart to heart than there were last season. Last season felt like just pure techno babble and like bullshit talking to each other, and this one feels like they're talking, like they have something, they have like a real thing to talk about when they communicate with each other.
Yeah, I think 7 is a big addition because they've kind of, everything was pretty stale at the end of last season. The kinds of stories they were telling. And I mean, the fact that we are talking about this, reinvigorating it the way that we are, is yet another indictment of the fact that they just dumped the concept of the show so early, because clearly it's interesting and clearly it's worth watching. Yeah. And you can tell stories with that concept. But they just ironed everything out so fast, and things got so homogenized into the, generic Star Trek stuff that it was tough to really get into a lot of it. But here, when you've got a character who, now you've got someone who, when the aliens that you're trying to help show up and they find out you have a Borg on the ship, they freak out and demand you give her over so they can
eat her,
torture her, or whatever. Yeah, like that's fairly compelling stuff for this show.
Yeah. I think she's been spoon, either directly or indirectly, to it. Because even, you can tie it into the Tom and Paris thing. I think the Tom and Paris relationship stuff in this episode is a mistake. I think this is a
Torres in Paris, you mean?
What did I say?
Tom in Paris.
Oh, Tom in Paris. Well, Tom is in love with himself.
It's true. It is the most important relationship.
His hand. No woman could match the beauty of his own hand. The thing about it is that, like, so I think in some ways, like the Seven stuff with the characterization and what I was just talking about, the characters actually talking to each other is all well and good. I think the Tom and the B'Elanna stuff is the bad example of this attempt to do this, right? So it's like, it works with Seven because she's new. I do not think that they've laid the groundwork effectively for what they're trying to do with B'Elanna and Tom in this episode, and specifically how quickly it turns. Like, I was blown away. She says, "I love you" at the end of this. I knew where it was going, but I was like, you don't need to say "I love you." This is premature.
Frankly, I think Tom feels the same way based on the way he responded.
The thing I really liked about the end is that there was no scene where they were both in sickbay going like, well, let's never talk about this thing again. It just ends with them being beamed back on the Voyager, which I liked. But I don't like I found the Day of Honor stuff to be kind of like generic-y Klingon bullshit. That is like that they kind of tack on to B'Elanna. I don't think Tom Paris has developed to a point where these characters are going to have a conversation about how much he's changed, because it doesn't feel like anything has really happened with him. He's just not been in storylines anymore, so you don't see him as much.
Well, he's been working on himself.
Yeah, I guess that's the case.
Off screen.
It would have been that's the episode 27 of each season. But I don't know how you felt. To me, it felt very melodramatic, unearned, and sort of like a little cringy, a little bit like I don't want this.
Yeah.
I don't think this is the time or place to be talking about this.
Well, I liked it. I didn't like that stuff. But the other stuff they did with B'Elanna, I did like. But the problem is, I think they kind of had 3 separate things going on at the same time with her, and they couldn't really pick a lane of what they wanted to do. And they tried to tie it all up with the final scene, but it just doesn't. I didn't think it worked because you've got the Day of Honor stuff, which is personal reckoning with who she is stuff, right? And I did find that stuff kind of interesting. You've got the way she's reacting to Seven stuff, which seems to be a kind of a separate thing. And then you've got the stuff with Tom, and I don't think the 3 of those things really line up in any meaningful way, other than the fact that B'Elanna's just kind of being shitty to everybody.
Yeah, I think the weakness of the Day of Honor concept is that it does not cleanly run through the plot lines that involve her.
Yeah, it's not really fleshed out well enough to really care about what's going on. Yeah. And so when you get to the end and she's like, it's time for me to have honor in my life by telling you I love you. It's like,
yeah,
I don't think that's how that works.
No, it's
I wish the holodeck Klingon showed up and said, no, you are supposed to kill him for honor.
He floats by in his own spacesuit.
Eat this pie and kill this man.
Just dabbing his mouth with a napkin. Just, oh, the Day of Honor is delicious. Yeah, a lot of eating on the Day of Honor. Yeah, I think that pinpointed the weakness to me is that her Day of Honor feels super superfluous to it. It just feels like it's like the generic catch-all that will describe what's going on in your life. Although I don't think it lines up at all because she doesn't really reconcile with Seven. And
yeah, I just assumed it was supposed to be her birthday.
Yeah,
and so I was kind of like, all right, yeah, there's a certain kind of Klingon tradition that goes along with birthdays that she's not ready to deal with. But again, they didn't really expand on anything, so it was kind of hard to tell. And it was I didn't think if all of that stuff was just laying track to get to the Tom and her stuff at the end, I didn't really think that worked either. Like it's like I liked that stuff up until they went over the edge with it, because like having him come in and like be like, yeah, so we built this thing together, like showing that they're spending time together.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah. You mean the holodeck program that they...
Yeah, the holodeck program, the fact that they're having dinner or they're supposed to have dinner, like that stuff is good. I think you can hold off on the I love yous for a couple like that's the way that this episode ends. I feel like it's not supposed to be the point where she says I love you. It's supposed to be the point where she like kind of recognizes that maybe she does have like it's not supposed to, you're not supposed to verbalize it at this point.
No, that's Voyager is supposed to appear before she says it, and it stops. Right. It prevents her from saying it. Yeah,
or even not even that. Like just going through this with him is something that pushes her down the line a little bit towards that. Like I'm not saying she should be at that point. I'm saying she shouldn't be at that point at all at this point. The other thing that I did like was, I was legitimately curious as to how they were going to get out of this, because I really did like, and I guess this is kind of a fourth thing that is kind of incongruous, but I really liked the whole day just getting worse and worse for her, where like everything she did went wrong and they had to eject the warp core, and like it's just the worst possible day you could have. And I found that stuff interesting, but I just didn't like the resolution of like, oh yeah, I love you. That makes everything fine.
Yeah. Do you think that they've established the Tom and B'Elanna relationship effectively to this point then? Because they have been showing them together for little to no reason in a lot of episodes.
Yeah. Just not to the, I don't think they've established it well enough to earn this ending.
I don't think they've established that there's a potential relationship at all. It seems like they just hang out with each other because they kind of like seem like, and like, they kind of, they have a little bit of like Bashir and O'Brien thing. It's like the joke is, there's like, oh, it's very homoerotic, but it's really, they're just paired together because they complement each other quite well on a writer level. So
yeah, there's a couple jokes. Like they make some mention of Paris always wanting to get to the handsy stuff or something. I don't know. There's some joke about like him always wanting to be close to her.
They do. I honestly, I think that might only be this episode, right? Like I don't get that sense prior to this. It really just feels like, I guess my point is that like, it feels just like they've been paired together because the writers think that they kind of antagonize each other a little bit in a way that you can write easily. But this episode takes a jump and says, no, actually they've been falling in love that entire time. I go, oh, that's surprising. I didn't recognize that that's what was happening.
The ending of this should be like episode 10 of this season.
Right.
Where you've spent 10 episodes
developing this idea. Of it.
Because that stuff is great too, because if you're writing a show or writing anything really, you can just throw that stuff in if you need to fill space.
Yep.
Like they don't have to be the focus of every episode, but if you do like one scene every couple episodes where Tom and B'Elanna are kind of flirty with each other, that's enough to get to the point where you have the one episode where you're going to deal with this and really do it for real, and then run out of ideas immediately after you do that, as you always do.
Was B'Elanna being a half Klingon the right decision?
I don't know. Works for me. I think it's an interesting concept.
Because I think that the problem with the Day of Honor stuff is that you've already kind of done this with Worf. I think like Worf is the embodiment of the B'Elanna paradox. Really, it's like she's just a more genetic representation of it. She's like, I'm half human, half. But
it's a kind of flip of it, because Worf is the hipster Klingon who didn't grow up with Klingon stuff, but is really into Klingon stuff.
He's the Klingon mixed in with humans, and B'Elanna is more like the human. It's more like Worf is more clearly an outsider, and B'Elanna is more like she's a human who has anger issues, and that gives her problems, basically. It's like there's a...
Yes. Yeah.
Worf is a little bit more of an extreme outsider thing. I think I would have, if I were to reboot it, I would have B'Elanna be some other half species, I think. I think the Klingon stuff is just kind of done at this point. It's like you've already done it with Worf, I think, in my opinion. And I don't think that, leading to the Day of Honor thing, that they've really ever spent any time with B'Elanna's sort of concern about her heritage, or at least it's never effectively come across to me as a reason that this is a problem, besides her being angry.
It did kind of, I did kind of think that, where I was like, this is not, I mean, I like the idea, but this is not something that they've ever really brought up before.
Yeah. It's always just that she's angry. She has a temper.
Yeah.
But you don't need to be Klingon to have a temper.
It helps.
It helps. I think I would reboot the show and give her a different concern or a different background or something. But outside of that, I thought that I didn't like the space floaty stuff at all, the dialogue there. But I was kind of sad that I don't think there's ever an entire episode of Star Trek where this is the problem. And I kind of like those situations where people are just stuck in some... It's very much like The Martian. Like, I wish the episode was built around random problems that came up and they had to fix and things like that. But the only problem here is that Tom runs out of air and she has to plug her air into him. But
did you notice that Paris... What the hell's the actor's name?
Robbie Dunks.
Robert Duckett. Bobby Dunks, that's right. That he started talking in slow motion when they got into space. Yeah. And I was like, what the hell is he doing? He's just in a space suit. It's not like the words are floating. It's
he was doing the slow motion fight from that Enterprise, the fourth season where it's RoboCop versus Archer. They're just whew.
Speaking of slow motion fight scene, it's amazing you brought that up, because I was when I was working out today, I was watching the 60s Batman show, and I watched this unbelievable scene where the Riddler had flooded the basement of the Gotham Bank and was down there in scuba suits trying to break the money out.
The safe, yeah.
And so Batman and Robin have to go down with rebreathers on. And so they did a quote unquote underwater fight, which was just them very slowly moving towards each other and throwing punches while there was like a filter that looked like bubbling water in front. It was fucking amazing. It was unbelievable. And the theme slowed down too, so it felt a lot more like languid. Very good. That show was fantastic.
That's taking a concept and swimming with it. Yeah, no, they don't. Unfortunately, here the space thing doesn't really amount to much of anything. But I wish it was, because I like those situations. I did think the ending of this was very convenient, because it's one of those endings where if you are a detail hound, you're going to come away from this episode not going, I'm so glad that they finally told each other that they love each other. You're going to be going wait a minute. Did they fix the warp core? Yeah. Where is it?
How did they get the warp? Did they get it back? They had to do stuff to it before they could plug it in. There's a lot of that stuff of the things that happen that they don't address, and you don't really need to, but it's just one of those ones where I was like, oh, I could see people getting annoyed at this.
Yeah. The warp core is fun. The warp core to me is a pretty good example of something I've talked about before, which is that with the move to CGI, things like this can happen now. You can just eject the warp core and have it floating around behind you. The other ones I think of are, I think it was in Picard or Discovery, right? Where the ship has a tractor beam and it's throwing asteroids at other ships. It's that's not a model thing. They could never do that. So that's all CGI and stuff like that. But there's I feel something was lost in the tone where when the models went away and they were allowed to do sort of superhero-y comic stuff with the spaceships, I feel it really hurt the show in a lot of ways. It ends up doing things like you seeing the warp core just drifting off feels strange. And not that there's anything wrong with the idea, but it does leave me in the detail realm of that thing is the vital core energy source of a ship, and it comes out clean. There's no wipe after that. It just falls out and it just floats away. It's interesting. Nope. I don't know. Yeah,
I think they did it. That was a big part of Lower Decks in the second season, I think, is they eject the warp core, right? Because it's one of those things they always... Yeah, I think so. It's one of those things they always talk about in Star Trek, but they never do. Yep. And so when they actually did it, I was like, oh my God, we're going to get to see it? And then it was just
it floats off. Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't crazy.
I did like the immediate aftermath, though, when Torres was like, yeah, we are at a dead stop, and now because we just came out of warp, the warp core is like 300 light years away.
You got to be quick on the stop button.
Far it was.
Yeah, if the warp core falls out, you got to quickly go.
What do you need a warp core for? You get those shuttles that have apparently light speed built into them.
Yes.
Just take all those shuttles, put some wires on Voyager, and just, yeah.
The lighting doesn't seem to diminish when the warp core disappears either, which I thought was was a mistake. It should look like you're out of power when that thing is gone.
Yeah.
Because maybe I'm wrong about this. Someone with the technical manual, it would seem like that should be the power source of the ship. Really, it doesn't just make you go fast; it's also the power source of everything. But anyway, the alien stuff, the homeless aliens. Homeless aliens was a good example of. I feel that there's meat on that seven bone that is not done justice through this. Like the tragedy of what the Borg do was not effectively conveyed through these homeless aliens, I don't think.
Yeah, it's because you only see one of them.
Yeah, and
then all their other ships show up and you don't see them.
You don't see them. There's a lot of them, but they don't. I feel there's a much more way that's loaded with emotional connection and sort of sympathy for them this way, that even their thievery is justified as like to the level that the Borg have like ruined their society. There's like a sadness to that story. I don't think it comes across here at all whatsoever, really, unfortunately.
No,
and I wish it did, because
really.
I think that's a really making Seven reckon with that, I think, is probably the way to go at this point. And maybe they'll probably do it in the future, but it feels like this is the first chance and they didn't quite make contact with the ball.
Yeah, I agree. And that reminds me of the line I was thinking of. Paris says something about always wanting to wait so long to make first contact or something like that. When they're out in that's his sexually loaded line. But yeah, I think this should have been its own episode, because I agree. I think there's a lot there for Seven to have to reckon with, and she's like, she doesn't really interact with them at all. Like there's that one scene where they're walking through the hallway.
Tuvok blows up her shit. He's like, that's a Borg.
He does. Yeah.
He knows these people have been destroyed by the Borg. He's like, it's just the Borg on ship. Yeah.
Yeah, we got one. It's fine. No big deal. It wasn't cheap.
We didn't get assimilated like you pussies, but we have a Borg.
Oh, you don't have one? Yeah, I think there's a lot more you could do there, but I think that deserves its own episode, you know?
Yes.
And I also think that that's something that works better when Seven is a bit more standoffish about where she is, you know, because she's becoming more and more human. There's the scene with Janeway where she asks her if she's hungry or something, and she's like, no, and then Janeway is like, but you're becoming more human. You'll soon be wanting to eat food. And then in my head, I just had her saying, yes, I will be pooping soon. My
alcove is stocked.
That scene where where Janeway's like, 7 of 9, that's just too much to say.
It's a mouthful.
Is there any way we could shorten it? Yeah. I was hoping you would use at the beginning of the episode the clip of Costanza being like, I got a name for you. 7. Just 7.
They stole the name. They stole my name. Yeah, which of those came out first? I wish I should know that, but I don't know.
Ooh, that's a good question.
I would assume this came out first. What year is this Voyager? It's 97.
97?
It might have been hold on, let me see.
That's pretty late in Seinfeld.
7 episode of Seinfeld. That's season 7, 95. Yeah, so that was 7. Seinfeld was first. Voyager copied Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a funny moment. It's just that's a 7 of 9. It's a whole thing. I don't want to say that. I'll just call you Sept.
It's like the more what's the word I'm looking for? The more reasonable version of that scene in Solo when he's like, Chewbacca. No, that's not going to work. We got to think of something shorter than that.
I have it reminded me of I always find it a very interesting decision when people deny you the ability to call them their commonly shortened name, right? Like someone will be like, I'm not Will, my name is William, and it's like, oh,
yes,
it's an interesting power move to play that when you're like, no, I go by the full 2 syllables.
The one that's interesting that I've run into is I have a couple friends who I know traditionally by their shortened name, but their wives only call them by their full name.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I don't think there's anything wrong with it or anything. It's just
they've chosen to go with the full name.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, because like
how Amy only calls you Wesley.
That's right. with the Z, that Z sound.
Yes.
No, my Wesley ended when I was in young elementary school. Teachers used to do it, and then it just fell off after that point. But no, I never fought back. I don't see why make people go through the extra work. Just shorten it. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's 3 letters.
I tried to be classy when I started doing comics and credit my full name, Clayton.
Yep.
And very quickly, I was like doing stuff with people who knew me. And so they would credit me as Clay. And then it's just, well, I guess I'm Clay now. So.
Ruined. This is ruined. No, but Seven goes along with it. She finds it acceptable that people call her just Seven. I'm glad they have the conversation, I suppose.
Imagine if Janeway had been like, that's too long. What if we just call you Niner?
We got this number theme going here. What if I shall call you Tim? I guess we're done with Day of Honor. Any other thoughts about this? Are you excited for the Torres and Paris relationship to blossom into something that you have to watch every week?
Not particularly. Again, I think it all depends on how you do this stuff, right? Like if they had been laying the groundwork for it and then you get a payoff, that's great. But I don't feel I am expecting it to be now they're just going to be arguing more. And it's going to be that, oh, well, they kiss at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm just, it can go both ways. I guess I really love DS9 had both worlds. It had Worf and Dax, which is probably my favorite Star Trek relationship. And then it had Odo gets neutered by Kira, and both characters just stop existing for a season and a half. And it's like, all right, well, that was a bad decision. They shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
So we'll see which way it goes.
I'm into that too. I feel like more shows should, when they put their characters together, if it doesn't work, they should recognize that and make that the story. Yeah. That it's just like, yeah, this was a bad idea.
Yeah.
Objectively, maybe we're just better off as friends.
No, I wished DS9 had done that. Like it wouldn't have made sense for the ending because Kira and Odo have to be together at the end of DS9 for that ending to really be impactful. But if Odo didn't leave at the end, I wish that they had at least been like, this was a bad idea. We shouldn't have done this. This was terrible.
What is it? Community did that, I think, pretty well. Where they, the first season was Jeff and Britta getting together. And then at a certain point, they were just like, no, I don't think this is going to work.
Yeah,
and then they just moved on from it.
No. Yeah, it's a decision point to make. Yeah, we'll see where this goes. I knew that those two got together. I did not realize it was so early in the show's run. I thought that felt like a season 6 development or something.
I wonder if the rationale is they planted the seed with that episode where they're married, the Year of Hell episode. Yep. And so it's like, well, everybody knows it's kind of going towards this anyway, so let's just do it instead of actually
Could be
doing the legwork on it.
Could be. The relationships have not, obviously, Kest is already gone and forgotten, but it's not, the relationships have not been Voyager's strong point, mostly because the character work is less than some of the other shows, I think, although it's improving, obviously. So that's it for Day of Honor. If you guys enjoyed the content today, you're going to go to patreon.com/The Pensky Files, support the show there. 200 podcasts you can availably download. You can download that are available. A whole bunch of stuff. We got some new stuff coming in 2024 as well, so you can check all that out. It's the best way to support the show. Thank you very much. And also, if you're a patron, you can leave comments about upcoming episodes, and we read them and react to them. Discord is down, so I'm going to have to read all of this. So here we go. Kyle Barrett says, Day of Honor. Why is it that every Tom and B'Elanna romance episode has Tom be some virtuous figure, while B'Elanna has to change her whole mindset to accommodate him? She's right in her first assessment of him. He's a repugnant fucking cunt. Why are the writers convinced this guy is such a catch and unaware of his many failings? In this episode, he disturbingly states, quote, "You owe me the courtesy of telling me what happened." That's an alpha line there, Mr. Kyle. Chats up 7 immediately after his talk with B'Elanna, gives her the exact opposite advice of forgetting the past and living in the now, as opposed to telling B'Elanna to embrace her Klingon past, showing he's a hypocrite who only says what he does so he can get in their pants, and then emotionally manipulates B'Elanna when they're on the brink of death. Outside of Paris being awful, the Seven stuff is decent, and the episode almost says something interesting about both B'Elanna and Seven feeling distant from their cultures, but it never quite comes together. 2 corsets ribbed for her displeasure out of 5.
It would be funny. I'm curious. The one thing I am curious about is how they decide to play the relationship, because I feel like B'Elanna, I feel like there's a little bit of stuff you could get into with B'Elanna not really knowing how to have a relationship with someone.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of The Simpsons in the episode where Lisa has a crush on Nelson, and she's like, do you want to go out with me? And he's like, okay. Do I have to do anything?
Yeah.
Like that kind of energy where she's like, all right, great. Now what?
Yeah. So, I mean, 7 fits that space, right? You just can't do it immediately with 7 because that's bizarre to have her come on and be like the sexual point of everyone's attention, really. So they'll put her in the suits, but they won't do anything else.
They should definitely, in one of the next episodes, have Harry Kim, I guess, because if Paris is off with Torres.
Yeah.
Have Harry Kim go, is it weird for me to be into her so quickly? Like, should I wait? Or should I just go for it?
It's the not another teen movie joke where they're like, oh, not her. She's got a ponytail and glasses.
Yes.
She's got Borg implants, not her. Taxel Bear says, Day of Honor. I know it makes no sense because the franchise is called Star Trek, but seeing Star Trek characters in spacesuits always looks weird to me. Maybe it's because spacesuits are very rarely used in the franchise overall. Anyway, I like this episode because it's not a love/breakup plot compressed down to 45 minutes. B'Elanna and Tom's romance is awkward at times, but to be honest, that's how it is in real life as well. I'm happy for the 2. 2 out of 5 or just the 2 of them? Changeling says, Day of Honor. Day of on her, but I hardly even know her. This episode was pretty weak. Exploring Tom and B'Elanna's romance is okay, but the B-plot of a species with a vendetta against the Borg coming in contact with a Voyager feels like it should have been the main focus, but it squandered the opportunity, instead going with Torres' terrible, no good, very bad day. 2 Drake memes of not wanting a Borg in engineering, but okay with your attempted rapist being there, out of 5.
Who's the attempted rapist? Oh, the Klingon guy. I mean, the Vulcan guy, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He was trying to Ponfar himself all over her.
That guy's Vulcan performance has gone downhill. He was great when he started, and now he's just like...
He ain't the focus. He doesn't give a shit anymore. He knows he's not the star.
All that nepotism. He's like Jerry Taylor's son, I think, or something.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah, something interesting. Jonas says...
I was just going to say, the stuff... The 7 stuff, reckoning with the Borg thing, it's a shame that they kind of blew through it, but that feels like something you could very easily come back to.
Yeah, they'll have to come back to it soon, I think. It's the I think it's my same point. It's very difficult to identify what the Borg thing means to anyone.
Yeah.
It's an abstract concept that's very difficult to understand what it actually means to you as a person. Jonas says, Day of Honor, I wasn't sure which was the A plot and which was the B plot. The Paris/B'Elanna romance plot was the more interesting of the two. I did notice, as Kyle did, that Tom was oddly interested in Seven during a romance plot involving his love for B'Elanna. Seven steals every scene she graces. 3 out of 5.
I do really like her performance so far because I think she's got some robot there, but I don't think it's overbearing. I think it's like just enough to give her a little bit of weirdness.
Yep.
It's good so far.
I agree. I think that she's a well-drawn, at this point, decently acted character. I think that, not well-drawn, but she has a thing in a way that is unique to the show. There's like a direction with her right away. And she's done well with it so far. Paris, I don't have I don't know how Kyle makes good points. I don't know how true or how authentic he feels about it. I don't find Paris to be wildly unlikable of a character, I guess. I just don't.
No.
Like, he's not. Should he be should the show be aware that he's sleazier than they think he is?
I feel like he was sleazier earlier on, and they've just kind of. The fact that they haven't used him very much has kind of
led to this so-called character development that he's had, where he's like a different man now.
Yeah. Once they got rid of Shea Fook, it was.
Yeah, he just had no reason.
Became respectable, I guess.
Because I like Bobby Dunks' performance. I think like with the right kind of character, I think he's fine. He's sort of like a milder Riker. In a lot of ways. Like I feel like he can fit that mold, but he doesn't have the I don't think they give that character enough of like a thing really that he's into. I don't know. I read Jonas.
Bobby Dunks, I caught up on Lower Decks recently, and he's in the finale playing his character from TNG.
Oh, the Locarno or whatever that guy is?
Yeah. He's the villain, the overarching villain of the entire season. Okay. Spoilers. It's pretty good.
Jaron Hatch says, Day of Honor. What a strange and aimless episode. The execution was actually fairly decent, with the alien makeup being a notable highlight, excuse me. But what exactly was the plot? That Torres was having a bad day? Maybe it's about her feelings for Paris, or perhaps her feelings about vague Klingon tradition stuff. I don't know, but at least Janeway and Seven are here, because once again, they get the best stuff in the episode. 2.5 plot lines that aren't really plot lines out of 5. Matthew Ross says, Day of Honor, a collection of 2 stories with B'Elanna stuff, which was interesting as to her stresses and uncomfortable feelings about her heritage or with Tom. Being extra nice to aliens obviously has got to stop, even if you know how to make thorium, because you can't save everyone, Janeway. Paris seemingly hits on Seven, and it was appropriately sleazy. As to the usual tension at the spacesuits, well, you know what was going to happen, but how many lost shuttles is this? The best scene, which I felt showed some realistic consideration, was how tenuous the ship's abilities are without its warp core, and its ejection was very cool visually. 3 cores out of 5.
I was thinking about that scene with Seven and Paris, and I was trying to figure out if he was purposefully kind of hitting on her, or if it's just his delivery makes it feel that way.
It's his delivery.
I don't think he was actively.
I don't think he even has a line that could be considered a double entendre or anything like that. I think that's just the way he has to play that. The way that the actor plays that scene. Yeah. I thought it was an unnecessary conversation between the two of them. I thought that's probably the reason why it seems so strange, is because he doesn't really have to tell her this stuff.
Yeah.
Norman Buckwald says, Day of Honor. Okay, here is where the challenge, in spite of itself, brings things down just a bit. The relationship of Torres and Paris, while worked on for about a season, was more often clumsy, and there were times fans questioned if there was any chemistry. I know fans who insisted it was never there, similar with, say, Kira and Odo. But the direction to tell from the perspective of B'Elanna and not Tom is what made it work. It's just the stranded trope was not very novel. It was sometimes hard to hear clearly what the characters were saying in their spacesuits, and the eventual I love you should have been replied with the Star Wars I know. Seven's story with the refugees from a post-Borg invasion was actually more interesting, and her ability to give technology back to them that they forgot about was rather clever. Even if her saying you're welcome may have been a bit fast, it was good. He thought that I love you was more appropriate than Seven saying you're welcome, that's an interesting distinction. Even if her saying you're welcome may have come a bit fast, it was good. I'll give it 3.5 looking at the watch, wondering when Voyager was finally going to rescue P/T out of 5.
I think the thing we're not going to get from the B'Elanna and Paris relationship is that weird episode where you get Hot Odo from the future.
Oh,
he's
yeah.
Like,
he's been in a Miami retirement community.
Tan. Yeah. Hot, middle-aged Odo.
That was a great episode, Children of Time. That was a really good episode, Star Trek. Grappler John Zorn says, Day of Honor, this is why smart people don't give to charity. If you're for some reason tempted to give a small quantity of thorium isotopes to those people, they'll just want all of your thorium isotopes. They'll steal your warp core, they'll demand you turn over your new zombie nacelle candy, and they'll leave you stuck floating in space with Tom Paris for your trouble. Fuck the needy. 3 pickle-garnished blood pies out of 5.
Ebenezer Scrooge over here.
What's that?
Decreasing the surplus population.
Patrick Seba says, we got a new toy. Rick's done it again. He's right. This new chick is fun. Her countenance gruff, her costume enough to show us that she's not a nun. Now eject the core, kill Tom, I implore. Fine, it can all be undone. Let Torres gets mad and aliens get sad, but 7 of 9 becomes 7 of 1. 2 lonely Klingons playing with paint sticks and an abandoned holodeck out of 5. So much potential, so little follow through.
We have all this pie left over. You must eat it, or at least take it home with you.
While the paint sticks were going with the battle with her, the guy in the back should have just had an ADR line just going like, the pie, watch out for the pie. You'll spill the wine.
Old Klingon proverb says it's better to make too much than to make not enough. Now, would you like to take some home for your mother?
Gives her a Tupperware on her way out of the holodeck.
That's the plastic bowl of Kalis. Microwave safe.
Kalis was not only a fine warrior, but his lasagna was well done all the way through. Never. Artoria says, Day of Honor, the saying goes to repay evil with evil is human, to repay good with evil is wicked, and to repay evil with good is divine. Given the context of this episode, it should have been more aptly named The Wicked and the Divine. We get to see the high point of Starfleet morality on display when, despite all that's done, Voyager still helps the Katati? Yeah, I guess that's what their name is. And the Katati have the gall to complain that nobody wants to take them in after they just treated someone who helped them this way. 3 acts of kindness out of 5.
Someone mentioned the makeup before. The makeup was pretty impressive, and that is probably why there's only one of them in the episode, because I think that would be quite the undertaking to do multiple of those makeup jobs.
I do like that saying, repay evil with evil is human, to repay good with evil is wicked, and to repay evil with good is divine. It's an interesting one. David Dunphy says, Day of Honor, how in the hell does Tom outrank Torres? She's the chief engineer. He just drives the ship. Doesn't matter. He's a white man. he outranks her. Benjamin Espinoza says, Day of Honor, what first seemed like would be a typical Klingon episode. He capitalized Klingon and episode, so I don't know if that was intentional. Klingon episode turns into a fantastic character study about 2 alien species learning to be a little bit more human through their interaction with the greedy Katati. What to do with 7? Placing her in the middle of typical Starfleet diplomacy lets us see these interactions with fresh eyes, while we, along with Janeway, are a little unsure if she can be trusted yet. Did she sabotage the ship? It's deemed an accident, but questions remain, ... 4 blood pies out of 5. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for leaving your thoughts about this episode at patreon.com/the Pensky File.
We have a shortage of forks here at the Day of Honor, so keep your silverware.
I hope that guy returns. I hope that becomes the new Shea Fook. Just that guy. He should become the waiter in that new Bally.
Oh my God, that would be amazing.
We're due for a new holodeck scene, right? Have we? I don't think we've seen the the beach place this season.
Oh, are you kidding me? Rick has highlighted on his calendar the day they get to take Seven to the fucking beach.
I'm looking forward to it. Also, I said in a previous episode that Jerry Ryan seemed a little bit shorter than I expected. I think something was weird in that she's much taller than Janeway, I think. At least they're shooting her that way.
Well, she's got big heels on.
Yeah,
too.
She's got those shoes on. But it was something that surprised me because I remembered saying that in a previous episode. Anyway, that's it. Thanks very much for listening, everybody. Thank you for supporting the show at patreon.com/the Pensky File. Clay, on our scale of 1 to 5, I think the patrons gave this one an average of 3, I think, would be a guess. What are you going to give it?
I'm going to give it a high 3. I think it's better than a lot of the 3s from last season. But I think it's a little messy to really come together and be one that I would really go to bat for.
I'm going to give it a 3 as well. I think it's I like the direction the show seems to be going. I think that could probably only lead to better episodes, but this one felt a little bit underbaked in pretty much all the stories. So I think I'm just going to end up giving it a 3. I like the 7 stuff a little bit more. I wish they had done more with it. I wish they had done less with the Tom and B'Elanna stuff, so it kind of evens out somewhere in the middle. I'm going to give it a 3.
Yeah, I'm honestly kind of surprised that they that the main story so soon is this Tom and this B'Elanna story.
Yeah,
when you've got 7 right there, and it's like we don't know anything about this character. I'm surprised they didn't go right into it with her and have her be like the the lead of the episode.
Yeah. I guess you do it.
But maybe that would have made Kate Mulgrew even more mad than she was.
Yeah. We'll see how that pays off. But so far, 7's been a good addition to things, so I can't complain. The actors can complain all that they want, but we're still very early to draw any conclusions about character representation at this point. Or like who gets the short shrift of this change? Besides Cass, who got sent into the oblivion.
Do you think there's a deleted scene, like an outtake, where Mulgrew is like, 7 of 9, that's quite a mouthful. What if we just call you trash?
Yeah, there is. What if we just call you usurper? What if we... I wonder if Braga starts dating Jerry Ryan at some point, too.
What?
So, yeah.
Does he really?
Yeah.
Rick.
I know.
Oh, no, the Brannon. Oh,
Brannon and Ted. I mean,
okay, that's fine.
You can blame Rick.
That's fine.
Berman keeps his hands off of her, I think. He's like he's turned into just like a Harvey Weinstein type character in our minds here.
Let's hope not. Yeah.
That's it for
He
Day
would
of
never
Honor.
do anything illegal.
No. He's just in the back. He's just in
We
the
have
back.
to say that legally.
I don't think Rick Berman has ever done anything actually illegal. That's my opinion. This is Day of Honor for Star Trek. We are done with it. Next episode is, I'll scroll up and try to find it. Nemesis, not the movie, the episode.
Oh.
So, thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you later.